the know, just how much to show, to know what to do, just jump in the queue, it's all to you. So what you gonna do? All in the queue, it's hella to you. All in the queue, just check out the view. All in the queue. To be in the know, just come watch the show, to know what to do, just jump in the queue, it's hella to you. So what you gonna do? All in the queue, it's hella to you. All in the queue, it's hella
Oh, y'all, excuse me.
all in the queue.
Oh, y'all, excuse me, because you know how much I hate to interrupt your scroll. So let me hurry up and get through this, because you can go back to do what you got to do, and I can go back to doing what I got to do. And I made an illustration just to make it easier for everybody. All right? This is me, and this is you. Okay? And this could be a family, friend, co-worker, alone in the world with a little cat dog. I don't care who it is, to whom it may concern. However, when we get together, it is now us. You know what always gets me is when we first start out, it's always cool, calm, and collected. I like it that way. But somewhere along the lines, you realize, this is you once again, realizing that you like to play games. Okay? You have become so fascinated with playing games that now all of a sudden you think that you could play with me. Here's you thinking that you can play with me. That's crazy. It's honestly crazy, but obviously you like to live on the edge. Okay? Now, you realize that you found a new love for these games, that you want to incorporate them in your everyday lifestyle. You are dedicated to the process. You are even willing to bet it all. Now, here's this person who knows what I know, and they know that you are in a great deal of trouble, okay? What a dummy is what you call it, because to bet all of that and to only be left with my ass to kiss is diabolical. It's honestly insane if you ask me. All right now. All right, because the thing is this. Let me break it down for anybody who may be a little confused in translation. Here you are with the right idea, but the wrong bitch. Okay? It's very simple. It's extremely simple. Okay? Right idea, once again, wrong bitch. Yeah. So now that I have gotten wind of what you think is about to take place, I am pointing you in the direction of where maybe someone would like to play games, okay? Which is all the way over there, okay? Are we there yet? No. Are we there yet? No. Okay, I want you to go further, and further, and further away. You're so excited to continue on with these games that you're like, how much further do I have to go? You are so busy making your way downtown, walking fast, okay? You want to get there. You're excited. And even through all of this, even through it all, I'm still being a good Samaritan, a team player, if you will. I grab my magnifying glass because I am determined to help you find you something safe to do. All right, y'all. Well, look, share with those who need to know. Have a good one.
On this good Sunday morning, I have prepared a statement for the men that are in my comment section saying derogatory things. I see y'all decrepit, bald-headed, stinking asses, but I have refused to respond to y'all because I ain't had the time. So I just wanted to make a blanket statement for every man that said something crazy to me. One man even told me I wasn't all that, and we know that is a lie. But anyway, I just want you to know I have been praying that your life get worse. Okay? I've been praying because it's already miserable because you in a woman comment section messing with her when she ain't messing with you. So I already know you're in a miserable life. You're living in somebody's basement and it smell like peanuts because they done peed on that couch. They done let their pit bull puppies pee on the couch and fight on it. So your life already bad and I want it to be worse. That's the end of my statement. That's all I got. I hope y'all have a wonderful Sunday.
Well. What's up? It's your girl SP. I'm back in the building. We done had a little break. I ain't broadcasted this weekend because I need a little break. Okay? Let me see who's in the building. I get to speaking to everybody. Sam, you okay? What's happening? I just want to make sure you're okay. All right, let me see who's in here. Hey Jody, what's going on? How you doing? Hey Angie, how are you? Hey Miss Carol Morton, how are you? I hope you're well. Hey Wyoming Gal, how are you? Lee Hamilton, what's going on? Jim C, how you doing? Strawberry Shortcake, how are you? Sam, again, I just want to make sure that you're okay because I don't want to have to boot you out of here. We are having a good conversation tonight. I definitely want you to be a part of the conversation, but I just want to make sure you're okay. You might be on a different time than the rest of us, and I already gave the blanket statement, so I just want to make sure that you are okay before I boot you. Okay, Prima Donna, how you doing? Oh, how you doing, Mom? Hey, Jaleesa, how you doing? It's been a while. Yeah, I just been minding my business, drinking my water. Like I've been normally doing till somebody calls my name. We'll get to that on Wednesday, though. Hey, Karen Johnson and GA. Kim Bug, how are you? All right. I hope y'all doing well. If you would please like, share, subscribe if you're not subscribed. I understand if you can't speak in the chat because we know things are going on beyond some of our controls, and I do apologize for that. Um, I want to apologize that there's loads of things going on right now. All right. Michael, can YouTubers have a ceasefire? I don't know. You would have to ask the ones that are firing, right? Because the people that are being fired at, they're just responding, right? So don't come over here asking me, can the YouTubers get a ceasefire? Tell the people that are firing to stop firing. Because then the people that they're firing at won't have to respond. That's all I'm gonna say. Because you have the right to defend yourself, right? You should have the right to defend yourself. If somebody call your name and you ain't called they musty, stinky ass name, then you should have the right to respond and defend yourself. I'm just saying the lady already told you. You live in a miserable life when you bothering folks and they not bothering you. I'm just saying. I'm gonna put that out there. Y'all do with that what you will, okay? All right. Yeah, you gotta wait till Wednesday because they on my time. I'm not on their time, right? And I'm busy. I'm booked and busy over here. So when I get time, I have to fit those people in my schedule that I have to respond to. But right now I can't respond to them because I'm busy. And they'll get responded to when I say they get responded to. That's how that's gonna work. Okay. Hey Gemini, how you doing? Hey Charlie girl, how are you? I hope your parents are doing good. I need to catch up on that situation, maybe. I want to make sure y'all good. Okay, so you see the title today, right? It says Suffer in Silence, Polarizing Politics. Right? So over here, we minds our business and we do corruption investigations. Somebody who's miserable with their life tried to claim that, I don't really do anything over here, which is fine, but be miserable over there. Don't be miserable over here. So anyway, we're gonna continue on doing what we do over here, which is talking about corruption, talking about things that we need to do to get rid of it, right? So today, we are going to talk with an amazing person, okay, that has kind of like, I would say, suffering in silence. It's different when you're sitting in a position of responsibility and power versus when you're no longer in that seat and you're able to fully regain your power and you're not having to make sure that everyone is taken care of but you. Is usually what happens when you sit in a seat of power. You are working for the people. So everything about your life revolves around making sure that you are responsive to the people and making sure that your conduct and your character represents the people who elected you or put you in that seat. And you all know that we have been on this channel talking about Kankakee and including them in the conversation. So today, As my guest, I'm going to bring to you the mayoral candidate for Kankakee, Dr. Minerva Walters. Woo! Child, let me tell you, with your beautiful self, when you come, you bring all the people out. Good Lord, there was a lot of people clapping and whatnot for you.
Thank you.
But you all take the time to welcome Dr. Walters to the
Thank you.
platform. She was the mayoral opponent to Chris Curtis for the mayor seat in Kankakee.
Yes.
And tonight we are really going to start to find out who Dr. Walters is. Because like everything else in politics, um, things got a little dirty.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did.
you know, things got a little dirty, and there were a whole bunch of non-truths and half truths, and people want to put their perception of you, and you don't know what people be angry about sometimes, um out there. So we want to have this conversation, so that the people in Kankakee can get some clarity.
I like that.
Right? When I say clarity, I said it that way because guess what? It's just going to be people. It's going to be some people who going to believe what they going to believe. I don't care if you give them the truth. They going to believe what they going to believe, and you ain't going to be able to tell them any different. But we want to have this podcast and have this conversation for the people who are willing to have an open mind and who are forward thinkers, right?
Yes.
And are willing to hear the answers, and not the answers that they want to hear, but the answers that are the answers.
Right.
Okay. Hey, Gloria Clemens, how are you? You just joined. Thank you for joining the platform as a member. There'll be some oaths you'll have to take later, but we'll deal with that when we have a private members only broadcast. Okay, so before we get started, I told you we're going to play a game.
Okay.
Y'all, I have been so missing these games. I have been so missing these interviews. So let's get to this game. I think this is a good one.
Do I need to see?
No, you don't need to see anything.
Okay.
You just need to be able to listen, I need to be able to see. Let me put my glasses on. Before I read the wrong thing. Let me put my glasses on though. Okay, I'm putting my glasses on. I got my glasses on. All right. Hey, Justin. Okay, we're gonna play a game. It's called Would You Rather?
Okay.
The Dr. Walters edition.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask you a question. You
Okay.
have two options. You're gonna pick the one you'd rather do, or rather be, or whatever the question is.
Okay. Okay.
All right. You
All
ready?
right. Yes, I'm ready.
Would you rather have the ability to fly or the ability to be invisible?
I would rather have the ability to be invisible.
I know that's right. Listen, I could think of a whole bunch of scenarios. I'd rather be
Find out a
invisible
whole
too.
lot if I was invisible.
Okay. Hey, eyes open. Thank you for coming in. Okay, so would you rather only be able to whisper or only be able to shout?
I would rather only be able to whisper.
The climate we live in now, I'm finna shout. Hands down, I'm finna shout. I'm finna shout. I'm tired of whispering. I'm finna shout. But that's just me though. Okay. Would you rather eat ice cream all day or pizza all day?
Ice cream all day.
Wow.
All day.
No, the
Right
lactose.
ice cream. The right ice cream.
The lactose and the intolerant in me said no. Okay. Would you rather be the funniest or the smartest person in the room?
I'd rather be the smartest.
That's you. I believe that. I believe that. And this is the last one. Would you rather have a permanent clown nose or a permanent clown shoes?
Clown shoes.
Let's take it taking me out. It's taking me out that you called that long. You was like, mm. I'm thinking to myself, I don't want neither. It's all clown stuff. It's all clown stuff. I don't want neither. If you're just joining us, we have the wonderful Dr. Walters, who was she's the former superintendent
Yes.
of Kankakee Schools. Hold on one second. Let me share this. Or if you, Justin, I don't know if you can hear me. And I don't know if you're on Facebook. If you're on Facebook, Justin, can you go to a page called Kankakee County Open Debate and post? Maybe no. Maybe I do it. It's fine. Justin, I have it. Thank you. Justin, be my saving grace. We're gonna make some people mad tonight. Um, if we have any um Kankakee people in here and you have some groups that I don't know about, uh, please share to those groups. All right. Posting in there. Let's see what happens. It's gonna be good. Okay, we're gonna get some people popping in here, I'm sure. Okay. So we are gonna have a conversation today starting around you,
Okay. All right.
right? Because people people think they know someone, just by seeing them here and there. Kankakee is not that big.
Right.
So you're seeing everybody and they just think they know you, maybe from that, just seeing you out. Oh, you were the superintendent and this,
Right.
that, and the third, and somebody said this and somebody said that. Tonight we're going to get from you the answers from you, and we're going to learn about you. So let's start out. How long have you lived in Kankakee?
All my life. I am years old. So I'm 56 years old. I've been here all my life.
Okay. Listen, there's nothing wrong with that. And listen, there are so many people that didn't wake up this morning. So, you
Amen.
know, I'm feeling
Amen.
in a way that
Yeah.
we doing good right now. She is
Amen.
so pretty, right, Jody? Hey, Tiffany Gibson, how are you? Um, Now let's go from that to your education. I want you to start high school, college, take us through your master's, your doctorate. Let's do that.
Okay, so I do want to start like the one memory that I have that is the most profound memory for where I am now is when I was in the first grade. So I went to Kankakee schools. I graduated from Kankakee High School, but the first memory I have of really caring about what happens with people in school was I was a first grader and my sister has mild mental disability. At that time, it's called mental retardation, edge complete mental handicap. Now the proper name is intellectual disability. And so she was going to the same school I was going to, and I didn't even know. I didn't know we were in the same school. And so because she rode a different bus. And so she would come home, struggle with education. My mother didn't know what to do. Most of us were in gifted and honors. So she's our child, she's our the family member that has a mild disability. And I decided to do her homework because I was gonna fix the world. I'm a first grader, 4 or 5 years old. I'm gonna fix the world. I'm gonna do her homework, make sure she put it in her bag, take it to school. And then her teacher came down. Again, I didn't know she was in the same building. Said, "Don't you ever do Joya's homework again." So that was the first memory I have of trying to help people who struggled in school, to try to help my sister. So I went through, we first was Westview because we used to have two high schools. So I went to Westview my freshman year and then it combined to Kankakee High School. I graduated from Kankakee High School. I went on to get a bachelor's in social work from University of Illinois, Chicago. And then I got a master's in social work from University of Illinois, Chicago, Jane Addams School of Social Work. So then I actually did my internship at Crane High School for youth guidance, and I thought that I wanted to go back to Chicago. And actually, that was my plan: is that I wanted to work either in Chicago public schools or in youth guidance. But when I did my internship for my master's degree in the school system, I did it in Kankakee, and before I finished, they offered me a job as a school social worker, and so I ended up being a school social worker in Kankakee. The reason, and that was so. If we start from the very beginning, first I worked at Head Start as a family service worker, making $13,500, and so then I just slowly moved my way into, becoming a school social work and then in administration.
So you didn't just pop on the scene. You didn't just be like, "Oh, you
Mm.
woke up today and was like, child, I'ma work with kids." No, you just told us your education. You started out, you said as a social worker, or really before then,
I was a
doing
family service worker in Head Start. That was the first job that I
in
had
Kankakee, right?
in Kankakee Head Start program. Yeah.
So
And
for all these people who thinking you just appeared,
I
you actually started at the bottom.
yeah, I was gonna say
Like
it
Drake
started
said,
from the
you
bottom
started
of
at the
my
bottom and now you here.
head.
You
Yes,
see what I'm
yes,
saying?
yes, yes.
So you actually started out at the bottom. You went from
I'm from
the
family
family
service,
services to social
social
worker.
worker to an assistant principal at Kankakee High School to a principal at Mark Twain School. And then I went and moved to Chicago Heights in a special ed district called Speed. And I became the director of human resources. And then from there, I moved to a superintendent in Chicago Heights at Speed. I only came to Kankakee because in 2012, my husband passed away. He was a police officer in Kankakee and died suddenly of an aneurysm. And so here I was, a single mom with a 5-year old. And, he turned 6 that summer, that had to try to navigate how do you work, 20 or 40 minutes north when you have a first grader that's here in Kankakee. And he was struggling, because he missed his dad. So he was having some trauma responses to school, and so I needed to give him more support.
I know all about that. I had to leave my former position at a dermatology office because my children lost their father 2 years ago and they were having their own trauma responses to that. So I can, identify with that. And I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
And so doctorate, you got your doctorate where?
So I got my doctorate from Illinois State University, and the reason, and it's a doctorate in special education, and the reason why I wanted to work on my doctorate is, first I said I wanted to be a university professor and teach teachers how to teach children that are not your traditional, perfect. I'm going to sit in my seat and do the homework. Like, I wanted them to learn how to work with children and families and communities that are not perfect. And so at first I wanted to go to the university. University doesn't pay as well as administration. So with me being eventually a single mother, I just stayed in administration.
And so it's interesting that you took on special needs as your specialty, um, because there were a lot of special things going on in that school district when you took it over, but we'll get there.
Okay.
Um, and so we talked about where you started out in the school district. You've been assistant principal, you've been principal, you've been a counselor. And so you had all of these. You went over to another school district and you were in human resources, and you built that human resources from what I've heard or the research I've done. You built that human resources department from nothing at the speed in that speed
Yes.
district. I used to drive school bus in that speed district. Um, and so
Really?
I
I
know,
probably saw you.
yeah, loads, listen, loads of times because I had problem children, believe me. Um, but I know that that is challenging because I used to drive a school bus in that district as well. As a school bus driver, I'm sure there's people out there saying, oh, she done did everything. Well, as a school bus driver, you have several routes. So you have several routes. You can have several schools. You go from elementary to high school to middle school. That's how it worked. Now, when I drove speed, that was I had that in one other school because of the timing.
Right, right.
And the kids at speed, unbeknownst to some people, don't just live in that neighborhood, they live all over.
They
And
do.
so we have to go and pick them up from Crete. We would have to go and
Yes.
pick them up as close Dalton, anywhere, wherever, if they were going to go to Speed, then we had to go get them from wherever they live.
Right. That's
Um,
correct.
yeah, and so because of that, I only had two routes. And one year I only had Speed as my route because I had a long route. And
Okay.
so,
Okay.
and I happened to be going out in the country picking up some kids. So
Okay.
time did not dictate I could have more than one route. But
Okay.
yeah, so I know what that is like. Did you Let me ask you, did you have any problems in the district at your first levels, like at your council level and at your principal level, with people, relationships with people in general?
So the only time that I can really remember having issues as a social worker is when someone wanted a student to be in a self-contained classroom tomorrow. And there's a legal process you have to go to. You can't just take kids out of class and just dump them in another class. Like, you actually have to go through an evaluation process, figure out what the student needs, figure out what resources and supports they need, and then you decide on where they're placed. And so that takes about 60 days and maybe longer if you haven't done anything with those children. So a lot of general ed teachers and administrators wanted the kids immediately taken out of their class, and that's not how it works. That's the only conflict I had. And most of the time, if I could talk to the administrator and teacher and explain the legal reason why we can't do that, it was fine. But that was it. That was the only
Okay.
issue I can remember.
And when did you decide that, okay, I'm ready to step up from principal to superintendent anywhere? So your first superintendent was it was at Speed.
Right.
That was your first one. So when did you decide that, hey, I think I'm ready to be a superintendent?
You know what? I can't even explain. So one of the things that one of the administrators told me is that when an opportunity comes, it's better to be ready than to wish you were ready and then the opportunity passes. So I went and got my alternative superintendent endorsement and wasn't really sure what I would do with it, but I had it. And when that position became available, because I was already in the HR, when that position became available, I applied for it. And the way that I see it is that the faith without works is dead. So you have to do the work, apply for the job, and then if God closed the door, it wasn't meant for you. And so I applied for the job, and God opened the door. And so I can't say. I think that I just realized that you have more impact on children and families if you're actually in a situation where you can change the policies in the system in order to meet the needs of those children and families. And I think that's when I realized, administration is not a bad thing. At first, I didn't ever want to be an administrator because I didn't want to deal with the politics. Funny, I should say that, but I
Mm.
didn't want to deal with the politics. But what I realized is the system can work against people in a way that social workers and teachers can't help children when the system is set up against those children and their families.
And you said something that I didn't know, and maybe the public didn't catch. You said you went and got a superintendent endorsement. What does that mean?
So we have you have to be licensed to work in the school system. Period. Like, teachers have to be licensed. So I had a license to be a school social worker. I had a license to be an administrator, a director of special ed, and what else did I have a license to? So those are the three licenses I've had. But I was not licensed to be a superintendent.
So you have to be licensed to
You have
be a
to be
super in the
licensed
state of Illinois?
in the state of, well, actually, I think most states, but definitely in the state of Illinois. You have to be licensed to be a superintendent.
Mm. This can go so many ways, right? Because so people have to be licensed.
Hmm. Through the Illinois State Board of Education.
That's some different classes that they need to take.
Hmm. I took a whole program because I don't have a traditional superintendent's license. I have an alternative license through Western Illinois University. Western Illinois University.
So we might need to start forming some of these school districts that have loads of problems, because we need to make sure that these superintendents are licensed, because What if they not licensed? I don't want you to answer. I don't want you to answer. But we are learning some things tonight, and I hope that you all are listening, because you definitely can forward the school district to find out if your superintendent in your district is licensed. If they not licensed, go off, because you just heard that they supposed to be licensed.
They're supposed to be
How
licensed.
did you get in this seat if you don't have a license? And that lady over there in that school district that I had talked to, y'all know that lady I told y'all I was not gonna call her doctor ever. I'm finna FOIA again and see if she licensed. Because
You can look it up online.
can you?
Mm-hmm. You can look it up.
How? Tell us, doctor.
So it's called ELIS, ELIS. So go to ISB, Illinois State Board of Education website, and then go to ELIS, and then there's a public search, and you can look up anyone to see if they're licensed.
Huh. Listen, on this platform, we learn things. Now you know how to look up if your superintendent is licensed.
Yeah.
Man, oh man, oh man, oh man. Woo, Lord, we finna be armed with some stuff today. Okay. And so you just decided that the next step was, if God opened the door, then that was the next step.
Yes.
Okay. I got it. So you hear that doorbell?
I did.
One of my special needs kids need some assistance. So while I'm assisting them, what I want you to do is I want you to begin to talk with the public about some of the major barriers
Okay.
that you had taking over the school district. What did you inherit as the superintendent in 2014
Okay.
of Kankakee
Okay.
School District? I'll be right back.
So the first thing I'm gonna have to start with is my husband, who is a police officer in Kankakee, did not want me to apply for the superintendency. The previous superintendent, I knew that she was retiring. In fact, she left earlier than she had planned, and I had started talking about, I really want to apply for the superintendency. He did not want me to, and he said for political reasons. Now there may be been other reasons, but I can only go by what he said. And so one of the first things that I did was I started going to football games just to get a climate, just to get an idea of, how the kids were, how the parents were, how the community was. Even though I lived there, I had not been at games in a while. So I just went to the games. Kids were the kids that they were 10 years ago. I had no concerns about children, the families, the community. The barriers that I had is that, first of all, we were deficit spending at a rate that in a year, had we gone the same, had we spent at the same rate, we would have been bankrupt. The other thing is that the year prior to me starting, I think either 2012 or 2013, we had a 55% graduation rate. The other issue was that there were these articles saying that the reason why the economy wasn't growing was because of 3 school districts and their graduation rate. I can't say the other 2 school districts, but they were in Kankakee County and Kankakee High School. So I had a conversation with the mayor at the time, and her concerns was the quality of education and the quality of the school district. And
pause right there. You was working with the mayor. The mayor actually was concerned about the school district.
Yes, the mayor, actually, I had worked with her during my first job as an administrator, as an assistant principal. And one of the charges that she gave me, because she was in charge of public relations in the school district, was to bring up the image of Kankakee High School and pictures and everything we did just to bring that image up. And that was my first year as an administrator. That was my responsibility. Besides the other things, the other duties is to work on the image of the high school.
So when you have those people saying that, the school district is separate from the village, from the city, it actually should not work that way. It should actually be a joint effort in trying to service. The mayor should be trying to service the constituents within her village or her city or his city, and make sure that they are getting everything they need when it comes to school, when it comes to whatever services.
Absolutely. Because So in Kankakee, we have there are families that I've known. I should say my families have known their families like for like 5 generations. Like my mother was friends with their, people's grandmothers or great grandmothers. And then in that same family, my son is best friends with one of, the fifth generation. And so we really literally have relationships along almost every generation. So given that, if the educational system is not educating everybody in the community, you're ruining the community. Because again, I can tell you there are 5 generations from when I grew up of people that well, a lot of them started coming from Mississippi, but then after Mississippi, they had children that went to Kankakee High School, and then they had children that went to Eastridge or Westview, then they had children that went to the new Kankakee High School. So at some point, if you're not educating the children, you're actually not educating the community. And so it is tied together. It is not, although they're separate taxing bodies, they have to work together if they really want the economy to grow and the population to be educated.
Hey, Dave Bryson. Okay, so let's talk about, you talked about those barriers. Let's talk about people barriers. We don't have to talk about specific people barriers, but how hard is it to work with first start with telling us how many schools you had under you, how many people you had under you, because to me that's a lot of personalities.
So that we had 13 schools. One of the schools was an alternative school. We had 32 administrators. I had 3 administrators that worked directly under me: the assistant superintendent of business, assistant superintendent of HR, and the assistant superintendent of teaching and learning. Then when I first got there, we had about 700 employees. By the time I left, we had about 1,000 employees because we brought transportation into the school district. And so there were 1,000 employees total 32 administrators, and only 3 that reported directly to me.
Okay, and let's get this chain correct. Okay, because if I'm hearing correct, I want to get the chain correct so that the public knows how things are filtered. Right. So,
Right.
so let's talk about how things are filtered. And in the school system, things are filtered up this way.
Both
Because
ways.
sometimes when we think both ways, okay. So I'm thinking as a parent, sorry.
Oh, as a parent,
Because
yes.
right, from
100%.
as a parent, things are
Yeah.
filtered up.
100%. 100%.
Right. And as far as the administration and all of that, it's filtered. It has to be filtered both ways for you.
Yes.
But
Yes.
as a parent, I'm thinking, okay, it's filtered up. So let's just go from the parent view for
Okay.
now.
I like that.
So you're the administrator, you're the superintendent, I'm a parent. How does information filter to you about me or about my child? Right? If something happens, I'm a parent. We're talking about from the parent level. How does information get filtered to you?
What should happen that often doesn't happen is that parents should go to their teacher. Then the teacher, depending on the size of the building, the teacher would go to the principal. At the high school, you would go to an assistant principal. And so then after you go through the assistant principal and the principal, then sometimes there's a director that's in charge of the principal. And so then they would go to the director. The director would have a conversation with the assistant superintendent. And then we had weekly cabinet meetings. The assistant superintendent would bring it to cabinet, and then we would talk about it at cabinet, and then it would filter back down. Now, sometimes parents would go directly to me, but what I would try to do is I would try to have the meeting in the school building, because I can't solve a problem that I don't know both sides of the issue. And so I would try to have a meeting. If a parent had a problem at King, which is one of my schools, was one of my schools, I would have a meeting at King with the principal present so that I could get both sides at the same time.
Okay, so it would stand to reason that only an escalation would warrant you maybe even hearing something, right? Because
100%.
essentially it means that principals try to take care of things in their building. They don't essentially try to let them escalate past them, right?
That's
because they
correct.
know that could be trouble.
Right.
Because if it go past them, that means something wrong with their conflict resolution skills and it has to now go to another level.
That's correct.
And so some things you may not hear about or know about because it either has been handled on that principal, assistant principal, teacher level, or it has hit the director and they've handled it, or it's hit the assistant superintendent and they've handled it. And the only way you may hear of it is in a meeting, and it could be you. What do you have meetings once a month? Was that cabinet meeting once a month?
Once a week.
Once a week. So once a week, you'll get a download, let's say, of whatever took place.
Yes, and we met face to face, so they would just bring agendas and they would talk to me about whatever was on their agenda.
And
Now,
that's only if it's something that was really bad, right?
oh yes, or a question. So if they're
Okay.
working on something, they said, "Well, I hit this barrier. Here's some suggestions, but what do you think?" And then we would problem solve that, and then they would move on.
Okay. So there has been a whole bunch of misconceptions out there, um, with people thinking that you knew about everything that went on.
So for me, it's amazing that someone logically would literally think that someone in $100 million organization with 32 administrators and 1,000 employees would know everything. I got to give you an example. One time there was someone that was cooking fish in a building, and that person was someone I went to church with. So I did know her. That's the hard part about being from Kankakee, is that you are going to probably know more than a superintendent that's not from Kankakee. So, but you know how I found out? They posted something on Facebook about me allowing this person to cook in the building. A secretary from the business office walked down with a copy of the Facebook post and gave it to me. That's how I found out. I didn't know. And so I think there's a lot of assumptions that I could know every single thing that happened in every single building, but I didn't know. The things that I did know would have to have escalated to the point where it got beyond the building administrator. Like you said, it had to get
Okay.
beyond the building administrator.
All right. Now let's go a little further with this hierarchy.
Okay.
So if you want to call it that. So it's all those people up to you,
Hmm.
and then above you
Is
is
the
the
school
school
board.
board.
Yes.
Okay. And let us know what because the school board is full of elected officials.
Yes.
Let us know what their actual function is, because this one superintendent claimed that that was her board and I couldn't talk directly to the board, but they was elected by the public.
The,
So can you explain
so
that whole relationship?
so I can tell you ideally what it should be. So there are
Okay.
7 people on the board. You don't have 7 bosses. You have one boss, and that's the board. And they're only considered the board when 4 people agree. And so otherwise, think about it. You'd have 7 people telling you to go to 7 different directions. And so there has to be at least 4 out of the 7 that are in agreement, before they're considered a directive from the board. The board is elected by the community, and they should be representing the community. Not they don't belong to the superintendent. The superintendent is their only employee, though. So there is only one, I'm sorry, there's only one employee of the school board, and that's the superintendent. And the board members are not in it, don't have any power until they come together.
Okay. Now, how does that how does that the flow of information? So what is it that the board or the quorum of 4 people, or whatever, what is it that the board actually knows about what's going on? What information do they get filtered?
So of course they're from the community, and so they get a lot of things from other people. But in terms of the structure of it, they should manage the policies, like enforce policies and make up the policies. They hire superintendent. They approve the overarching budget, and they approve the overarching vision and goals. So I had a friend of mine come up to me when I first became the superintendent and said, "I'm interested in that clerical position. Should I talk to you, or should I talk to so and so who's on the board?" That's not what the board does. In fact, I don't even hire the secretary in a building. The building principal interviews and processes and hires their own secretary. And so the process for getting that person employed goes through HR, but the interview happens at the building level. And so I think a lot of people get confused. They think if they go to a board member, they can get hired. Well, that happens, but that's not how it's supposed to be in a healthy system.
Right. Okay. And so let me just tell you, so people, the public, is able to email the board and alert them of a situation that
Mhm.
happened, and that should be okay, right?
See, that never bothered me. And so let me explain the reason why it never bothered me. Understanding that you can't control communication and you can't spend all your time controlling communication. The only thing I ever ask my administrators to do is, could you give me an opportunity to solve the problem before you tell the board? If the board knows before I know, I haven't even had an opportunity to solve the problem. But board members live door to each other. They go to church with each other. With community members, they go to church with community members. They're in clubs with the community members. You cannot control the community talking to the board. And so I never worried about that because I was going to come with facts and evidence to show what my recommendation is and why I made that recommendation. So I never worried about who talked to who.
Hmm. And that should never be a concern when you're trying to be transparent, open, and working with the public, because you really are there to serve the public because you're serving the children.
There are some superintendents that try to control what the board is going to know. And so just like the superintendent can't know everything, the board literally can't know everything. They just don't know everything. It is the superintendent's responsibility to give them as much information and facts about a situation so that they can understand why the superintendent is making that recommendation. But a lot of people, as people in general, I mean, it drives me crazy when people withhold information to manipulate your decision.
Mm.
A lot of people do that. So they're going to give you parts of the information, then you make a decision and find out later they didn't even tell me the whole story.
Hmm.
And so that happened a lot.
So let me ask you this. This is not a hypothetical situation. This is a situation that actually occurred, but I want to know, as a superintendent, if this had happened in Kankakee, what would you have done?
Okay.
Child goes missing for 4 hours. The driver of the van shows up to a school in your district all of a sudden with the child. You're alerted by an outside source. So you're emailed and asked a FOIA question. Now, I don't know if you're the FOIA officer, but it seems like the trending thing out here in these South suburbs that these superintendents, who are supposed to be resolving conflicts, are also controllers of the information. That's why I'm glad you said it's not your job to control the information or the flow of information. It's your job to have a response to whatever the information is. So what would you have done in that case as the superintendent?
The
This
first
is a
thing
hypothetical situation for you.
So even though you have layers between the principal, because this is so serious, first thing I would do is pick up the phone and call the principal and say, hey, I got this information that this happened. I need a report. First, I want you to verbally explain what happened. And then I need everything in writing. Why didn't we know that the student didn't make it to school? Where was a student from the time that they were supposed to be in school to the time that they actually arrived in school? And do you have evidence that you know for a fact that in that 4-hour time, what you think happened actually happened? Because you weren't there. So I used to have this joke, and I would say, don't get offended if I ask you a question. Because if somebody tells me that one of my favorite administrators, her name was Felice. If somebody tells me that Felice was running naked in the parking lot, I wasn't there. I wasn't in the parking lot. I got to find out if it's true. Even if I don't think it's true, I still have to find out because I wasn't there. So what I started telling my administrators is to do is, even if you think it's not true, consider it a hypothesis. Well, I believe it's not true, but I'm going to gather the evidence to figure out, am I right or not? That's what I say. If you weren't there, you don't know what happened. I would never say, oh, my administrator would never do that. If you weren't there, you don't know. So gather the
Mm.
evidence and the information to know exactly what happened. Now, once I figure out what happened, there will have to be some accountability at some level. My first question is, where was that van driver for 4 hours? Like, that's my first question. And so that might be the first person that I'm asking, why is that person working with our children? So, but everybody has to have due process too, though. Like, I have to give people an opportunity to answer. Like, you were gone for 4 hours. Where were you? And then they tell me where they were, and then we make a decision about what happens from there.
Right, because when I was driving school bus, it was an absolute no-no, and it was grounds for termination to take a child outside of their district lines. Um and not be on a field trip, if that makes sense. You know what
That
I'm
makes
saying?
that makes perfect sense.
Okay, so
And there should be a rule where you're checking the bus to make sure that there aren't little kids sleeping in the back, because that's happened before. In fact, that happened to my son. My first year as a single parent with him he was a first grader, and I'm there waiting for him to get home, and they don't know where he is. Well, I was okay because we were in Kankakee and I knew how the system works, but immediately the school blamed the transportation company blamed the school, and when that starts happening, all the anxiety goes up because now you're like, my child is missing. Where is he?
and y'all doing this.
Yep. And he was on the bus sleep. And I mean, like,
Yeah,
yeah, but the point is, the goal is to figure out where that child is. The goal is not to prove that it's somebody else's fault
right, at that time, at that
at
point in
that
time.
time. After
Okay.
you find the kid, then you all do what you need to
There
do.
are process there should
Yeah.
be processes,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
um Oftentimes I feel like these superintendents think because they have doctor in front of their name that they can never be wrong, or that they can never take a suggestion, or that they can never be like, okay, wait, let me reassess what happened, and maybe we need to put some processes in place because there's a hole here, there's a gray area, there's a loophole. And so, me, I don't really. That's another reason I took my kids out of school and I homeschooled my children, is because there was not a lot of listening to the parents. There was a lot of, well, I went to school for this and I'm educated for this and I am Dr. So and so. Well, guess who I am? I am so and so's parent. Hello, nice to meet you.
So a lot of
Okay.
people, I operate off of positional power. My title and my education dictates that I should be able to have power over you. Well, like, we can't operate like that. Like, we have to actually so I'm gonna give an example. I had this one student that was just cursing everybody out because I worked in alternative school. I had to go to the principal and say, let's try to get past the cursing and figure out what he's trying to tell you. Because if you get past that, what he's telling you is right. Because basically, he gave you his cell phone and now you lost it. And so now he's an alternative school kid. Of course, he's cursing you out. But let's get past that and look at the fact that whatever system you had in place, you lost this kid's cell phone. And
Yeah,
so
my
that's one of the things we have to do.
yeah, my grandmother used to say, eat the chicken and leave the bone.
Oh, I like that.
Cause the only thing that's important is the meat, right? Okay.
Exactly.
Get the meat, leave the bone.
Well, a lot of people have a hard time with it because they take it personal when people are angry. People aren't always angry at you. Sometimes they're just angry at the situation. They've had all these things happen to them at once, and then you're just the last straw. So that's something that people have to recognize in our families, particularly our families that have been traumatized for generations. Like, you just got to figure out, what is the message that they're really trying to give you? Like, what are they really trying to say? And can we help them in a way that helps their children?
Right. And I feel like in some of these underserved communities, they have not been heard.
That's
So,
absolutely
and you are continuing to have these people with these thought processes that my title and my education dictate that I know more than you. But do you know my child? Is what I'm asking. Because
Mhm.
at the superintendent level, you never touch my child. You might hear my child, you hear about my child, but you don't work with my child. You're not in their presence on a daily basis. You don't know their capability. See, these were the problems that I was having, right?
Right.
Because when you sit in these IEP meetings, sometimes you sit in these meetings with people who've never met your child, and sometimes and you have to and I would address them as such. Who are you? Like, I don't care about your credentials. Do you work with my child on a daily basis? If the answer is no, sit and observe.
I agree.
Because it's very hard as a parent to express what barriers you're having at home, right? Because they can do one thing at school, but they might not be able to reproduce it at home.
Can I
And those go ahead, go
I
ahead.
just got it. So remember when you asked me like what were some of the issues that I had before I became a superintendent?
Right.
That was one of the issues that I had. So I would, so my responsibility is to interview the parents and give a social history. And so I would interview the parents and I like to go in the house if the parents would allow me in their homes. And so most of my interviews were in the parents' homes. And when I was in the home, you found out something about the child that you don't know at school. So one of my most difficult kids, I was in there interviewing the parent. He comes in, he takes a little stool, he goes and get his bowl, he puts it down, he gets his snack, he goes and sit down, he eats. We don't see that in school. And so then when I go to the meeting and I describe what I saw at home, which was different from what we saw at school, people actually got angry with me because they got angry that I could describe a child that was flourishing at home but struggling in school, and I didn't understand the anger. It was true. The child does perfectly fine at home, but
And
he's
to
struggling at school.
my son was the same way, but it was because they were allowing him to be that way. Like, when I would tell them, do not allow him to do that. When I would just straight up tell the teacher, listen, I'm sick of you and I'm sick of him. He know that he can do what you asked him to do. You are allowing him a way out of not being able to do it.
Right,
Stop it.
right.
See, that's what they didn't like, is when I would say, no, stop it. Because he can, and when he's at home, he does. So I think that this school system thing is becoming, and I don't know, you can chime in because we're going to get into that portion now, um convoluted with a whole bunch of politics.
I'm
you
100%
know
agree.
Now it's becoming, a thing of, I don't like this person, and the kids have been taken out of the conversation. So let's move to, you have these barriers that you have to face with, the graduation rate,
Yes.
the reading scores, the math scores,
Finances. Yes.
whatever the goals are for the board,
Right. Right.
right? Let me see. I read somewhere that during your time, you brought a whole bunch of money to this school district. Tell me about that money and what it was for and how you were able to do that. And as the superintendent, is that one of your jobs?
So technically, I don't know that it was my responsibility to go for the grants that I went for. But what happened is you have limited resources. And so when we start talking about giving more resources to students who struggled versus giving more resources to gifted and honors, and I was a gifted and honors kid, so I'm not even criticizing that option. But when we start talking about giving different resources and putting the resources where they needed to be in order for those students to thrive, there was always a conversation about, well, what about my tier one grandchild or tier one daughter or tier one son? And the tiers are basically, tier one is those students that are doing fine with whatever you normally put in place. And so then I started trying to find grants that would provide additional support to those students that weren't doing great very easily, that needed additional support. And so I applied for several grants. One was a community partnership grant where we increased our community partners. One grant was the grant through ICESA, the R3 funds, where we developed a youth empowerment program. And the goal was to provide support for everyone, because it wasn't like we said, if you're in this group, you can't have the money. But support for everyone, but it really targeted those students that needed additional support. And so I looked for the money just because we were having these conflicts about where the resources should go. And so I said, well, if I get additional resources, there shouldn't be a conflict. Well, there is still a conflict. Once I got additional resources, there was still a conflict on who was getting access to the resources that I developed for the children, or I shouldn't say for, but because of the children that were struggling in at home and at school, I tried to find additional resources.
And so when you got the money, it already came. You already had a directive for it, right?
Mhm.
Then here comes, once the money comes, though, here comes the politicking.
That's exactly what happened.
Because now you become the bad guy, because now you holding up funds from this, you holding up funds from that. Well, actually, these was funds we didn't even have, honey. I mean, how
That
much how much total funds did you end up bringing to the school district?
in term okay, so let's start with the my second or third year. There was actually money out there that the previous administration didn't even apply for. And so the one of the first things I did was apply for it wasn't a grant. It was a school construction bond to bring, I think it was about $29 million to renovate the high school. So it was a bond to help renovate a high school that had not been renovated in years. And so that was one of the first things I did. After that, I'd say about 3 to 5 million extra dollars for community partnerships, for additional funding for our students through youth empowerment. The youth empowerment program had an African American male group, it had a girls group, it had a Hispanic alliance. Like whatever areas we felt like we needed to shore up, we had resources to help with that area. The girls group actually started before we had money. The girls group started because when girls fight, it's vicious. And a mom called me and showed me a video of her daughter fighting, and it was vicious. Honor student, kid. I mean, she's a smart girl, but she had some trauma, and so she got into fights. And so we started the girls group to try to heal those relationships among girls that sometimes started as early as third grade. And we started that girls group. We put funding in the girls group, and then we found more funding for the girls group. And those original girls that started that girls group, they aren't fighting anymore. They're actually cordial with each other. And then some of them are in college now.
And like you said, this has spilled over to the community. So now you have tensions in the community that were high outside of the school being
Right.
addressed through the school,
Yes.
so that the community could benefit as well.
Yes.
Um Man, we're gonna talk about this particular subject, and we're gonna pick up. There will be a part two. If you guys could please just thumbs up the video, just like the video so that it can get out there in the algorithm. We're gonna end on this note, and we're gonna talk about this, and then we're gonna get more in depth on part two. You're gonna want to come back for part two, because as you went on in your tenure, um you began to face a lot of politics, but you also became a part of the hostile work environment.
Yes.
um can you tell me what initially started, or where this hostile work environment began?
I have to tell you, it actually began before I even officially started, but at a lesser degree. So, we had a board member that wanted to give somebody more money than somebody else, and that's just not how you operate. Like there's a system, and there's salary schedules, and everything should be aligned, or else that's when you get into legal issues, when you're making financial decisions based off of relationships. And so I did figure out a way to compromise, and I created a salary schedule for administrators so that we could determine who should get paid in a fair way. That was the beginning, and that was before I even started. But I think it became the most difficult during COVID. And then after COVID, when we had to return to a new normal, that's when it got really, really ugly because you had, I call them the traditionalists. We had people that felt like school should go back to how it was 10 years ago. But there were truly some children that did well. No one wants to talk about the kids that did well in COVID. My son was one of them. He was on a blended schedule and he did better on a blended schedule than he did in school from 7:30 in the morning till 3 o'clock at night. And so no one wanted to recognize that there were a small portion of kids that did better remote and did better blended. And if you think about it, remote is no different than homeschooling. But the difference is if you're a remote student in a school district, you get the curriculum materials, you get access to an educator, you get a Chromebook. So it having a remote option actually opened up opportunities for families that didn't necessarily have the resources to just go directly homeschool. And so, but that was under fire by people that homeschooled their children at one point. And so so in my opinion, how can you criticize the remote option when you used to homeschool at one point?
My daughter is one of those that did better at home during COVID, and she did not want to go back after COVID. That's how she ended up. I ended up homeschooling all of my children, but it actually ended up benefiting all of them. But and one of the things, I actually think that there was something traumatizing that happened when she was going in person. But one of the things that she said was being in person is too distracting.
I agree.
And so that worked out, but there was no option for those children. Um, and at the district that I moved into. So I never registered my kids and they just homeschool. But um there was no option for those kids that did better at home. So now they're back in school and doing poorly again. Um oh wow, I love SP to interview to tell us, are you upset? Oh, okay. So what what was this hostile work environment like? I mean, were you called names? I mean, what happened? We're going to show some things in the next podcast when we talk about this hostile work environment, because there were cease and desist. There were, you go ahead.
So let me start by saying that it was a hostile work environment, but I don't know. I can't explain it. I knew it was because I'm HR. So I knew it was, but I had no reason to address it because like I was able to get the things done for the students that needed to be done. But it became increasingly more hostile over time. And finally I said, you all are creating a hostile work environment and I need you to stop. I was not asking for an investigation. I was not asking for anything. But one of the board members kept pushing and pushing to get an attorney and investigate this hostile work environment. And I kept telling them, you don't want to do that because when the information comes out, it's going to be a hostile work environment. Because remember, my background is human resources. Um, and I think that sometimes when you say you don't want to do that, they think you don't want to do that because of selfish reasons, because you just made up something and it's not true. And so I think it kept being pushed and pushed and pushed. So finally, it was the beginning of the school year. We were short staffed. We're trying to get the school year together. The attorney is calling me and saying, you need to come up north. Kankakee is about an hour south of Chicago. So we call
Right.
it up north. You're gonna have
Right.
to come up north and you're gonna have to give this interview, like 4 hours to a whole day interview. So I finally did it, and there was a report, and a lot of people don't know I have the report. I do have a copy of the report, and basically the attorney was saying because it was ongoing, it could be a hostile work environment, and give me $50,000 or $60,000 more, and I can collect the evidence, and I can tell you for sure. And I'm assuming, I don't know this for sure, that the board decided not to give the $50,000 or $60,000 and decided to work with me on my retirement.
Which was smart on their part, because when we get into part two, and you guys, I'm gonna put up on the screen some of these horrible things that was said. Um, you are gonna be flabbergasted. I mean, I don't know. I was shocked. I was like, what? Hold up, the first line? Is that what we doing? So, when you all see this report, um, yeah, you're gonna be flabbergasted. I hope that you all have learned something this evening about the makeup of schools and the hierarchy, and also that schools are full of politics too. You
Yeah.
have people who are for this person but not for that person, and they do things in that vein,
Hmm.
right? Their behavior and all of that reflects that vein. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Walters? We'll take a few questions. SP, is this district we looked at scores? Yeah, Jody is a teacher. She's a virtual teacher. She teaches from home. She's been teaching for the better part of 27 years. And I had her look at the scores from your district before you became superintendent, because while you were running for mayor, people, it's always going to be mudslinging. And so the mud that people were slinging was that you were the reason
Oh,
that Kankakee School District was underperforming. When in all actuality, when we went to the Illinois School Board um, website, Kankakee been drowning for years before you even got there. So
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Jody, it was for this district. That's a shame to retire. Yeah, she had to. She retired because you know why? Because Dr. Walters um, is untouched by politics, because she's a pure soul. She's a pure heart, and she didn't really want to see, in my opinion, anyone get harmed, hurt, or not be able to take care of their family, because she could have did that. But she decided that that wasn't what she wanted to do, and she retired to just, I ain't gonna say make it all go away, but just to quiet the storm for the children, because
And
she
so
is a
now I
children
actually,
first.
yes, 100%. So now what I love is that I still work for school districts, but I only work for school district where I see the majority of what they're doing student centered. And so I'm very picky as to which school districts I actually help now, because if this is about politics and money, I don't want to be a part of that.
Right, because you're for the kids. Audra Banks, don't worry, you can always rewind. This was a great show, though. Audra, this was a great show. If it's anyone you need to rewind, this is the one. Um, so if y'all have any more questions, drop them in the chat before we get ready to get out of here. On the next episode, Dr. Walters went on a podcast.
I
We're
did.
gonna listen to this podcast. We're also going to look at some responses from this podcast that took me out. And when I say out, I mean all the way out, about how they responded to me. Um, I love that she's still involved. Oh, yeah, she's always going to make a difference in children's lives. Does that mean she's hired as a private contractor?
In the last year, right after I retired, I was a private contractor. This coming year, I'll be an interim superintendent for a very small rural district that also needs a lot of support for their children.
Audra, I can tell you very safely that she do know the good districts and the bad districts.
Yeah.
I can tell you that for a fact. But
It's not the children in the community, it's the leadership and the politics.
okay.
So,
Um yeah, so in part two, we are gonna discuss this podcast. Like I said, when she was running, that was the main mud slinging that was being mud slung by the other side, that she was the problem. Um, I will go to show you guys the scores before she even took over that were horrible before she got there. That began maybe to improve while she was there a little, what she could do in between all of the politicking, right? Because that politicking gonna politic, and it's gonna get in the way of things if it can. Um, We are also going to talk about on this podcast. The accusation was that, and I didn't understand this podcast because I was upset that the podcaster had not done any type of research in relates as it relates to the topic that they were talking about, which was the school district. They hadn't done any research, and then I was told on the post that podcasts are not held to the same standards as journalists. And where and what planet do you live on? Because if you are giving information to the public, you should be responsible and judicious in the information that you are giving to the public. It should be true, correct, researched, and proven, right? And everything that she didn't know could have easily been forward, which was really pissing me off that she didn't do it. But we're going to talk about this podcast. We're going to talk about this cease and desist. We're going to talk about um, all things politics, maybe a little. It's a touchy subject. You know, the school district, a lot of money flows through the school district. And so this is a very, I want to thank you and commend you for coming on this platform because not many people are willing to speak out about this issue because of backlash. But now, like me, you have the opportunity to do what you want because you work for who? For you. Okay, imagine that. Imagine you can't tell me what to say because I work for me.
Exactly.
And so I think that's a very liberating thing, and I thank you for being open to do so. Justin, what you saying? My daughter did so much better during COVID that she stayed on as homeschool after trying to go back. Yeah, very hard adjusting. I mean, I was a sub. How do one differentiate to take the assignment or not? So she's a sub she was a sub. I don't know if she still does it. But she was a sub, and what should dictate a good district or a bad district for subs? What type of environment did you create for subs in your district? Did you have subs in your district?
We had subs. Most of the time, the principals actually work with the subs. And so I would tell you sometimes the subs experience, if it was just a daily sub, sometimes the sub experience, substitute teachers' experiences were better than some of the teachers that were there every day because, the principal wants you to be there because otherwise the principal might have to cover the class. And so sometimes the principals are a lot more supportive and forgiving to subs simply because if they don't have subs, they may have to cover class. I mean, there are times when I was a superintendent would step in a class and cover it till they could to get someone to cover it. A lot of administrators, once they come out of the classroom, they really don't want to go back into a classroom. I didn't have a problem working with the kids from the littlest to the oldest. That is really my passion, and so I didn't have a problem stepping into a class and covering a class until they could find somebody. So a lot of times the administrators are more supportive of subs.
Buck baby, thank you for the super chat of 199. I appreciate you. So you would rather pick a district that is more welcoming to subs, would you say?
A district that's more welcoming, that has some structure and some expectations. So you walk in and they tell you these are the things I need you to do for the day. And a district that the teachers actually do sub lesson plans. Because if you're a sub that has never actually worked with children and you walk into a classroom and the teacher doesn't tell you what you should do, that 6 hours with students and having no direction is going to be difficult.
Quite. Quite. I can tell you as a stay-at-home mom teacher. That's what they call me, mom teacher. Yeah, I can tell you that that's quite difficult when you don't have a direction for the day. So
Yeah.
even when I'm cooking my kids breakfast in the morning before they touch the computer, we're talking about what subjects we're going to focus on today, or and what we're going to do today in juxtaposition to what we did yesterday. And so yeah, that's tough. That's tough. Audra Banks, thank you so much for the super chat of $20. I appreciate you so much. So we are going to continue this conversation. Part two will be going into this cease and desist situation. It's beyond me as to why an administrator or even anyone in the school system because you don't know that these actual things are taking place, that you would have to even send out a cease and desist to people you work with, no less,
Well, these
or around.
yes, yes, yeah, yeah,
You know, that's more difficult to me. That's a more difficult thing than handling the problems of the kids, is handling problems of adults
exactly,
when that's not what you're being paid to do.
exactly.
But I digress because people like, people blow my mind every day. So we're gonna have you back
Okay.
when your schedule dictates, because you're a busy person. Um, you're working for yourself now, and you are getting to the money. Okay, you getting to the money, and we are helping people in the process. And also, I want to let you guys know something. Let me read this about Dr. Walters,
Uh-oh.
because for me, when people play with your name, that's like a pet peeve of mine. Don't play with my name. You can play with anything. It's a couple things you can't play with: my name, my children, and my money. Everything else free game, but those three things you can't. And let me tell you something about Dr. Walters. I'm gonna read this from her bio. Let me put it up on the screen because I don't want you all to think I'm lying. Okay. Right here, it says Dr. Walters has presented on a range of educational topics at various local, state, national, and international conferences. In 2004, she had the honor of presenting at the China US Conference on Educating Students with Special Needs in Beijing, China.
Yay.
Her presentation, Building Collaborative Relationships with Families, was well received. Come on, TED Talk.
Yeah. Yay.
Okay. Come on, TED Talk. Okay. So, for the people that out here thinking that she is this person who has no credentials, hasn't spoken anywhere, hasn't done anything, child, please, Google is your friend. That's all I want to say. Google is your friend. AI is your friend. All of those things that you be doing trying to find out if Pookie is convicted of whatever he convicted of. You could do the same thing when it comes to your teachers and your administrators.
That's
Okay,
true.
whatever
Very true.
whatever detective work you be trying to find out if little Pookie got a side piece, just take that same knowledge and look up your teachers and your administrators so that you know who you're dealing with.
Amen.
Okay, but we're gonna be back with that with this unfortunate portion. I feel like this unfortunate portion of these political conflicts, which led to your ultimate retirement,
Yes.
which is unfortunate for this school district because I want to know, because this podcast had you on like you was the current administrator when you are not.
No, I'm not.
So, and you don't have to speak, I'm going to speak. That district is still currently encountering struggles and all types of situations. I came to you all with the grooming situation. I did a live about that and I told you guys about that. And these things are currently happening under this new administration. And so, what I want to know is, these people are just going to keep going, blaming until they get someone that does what they want them to do and just be quiet.
Mhm.
They have someone, allegedly, that's doing that. But these issues are now harming the children directly. And so I'm anxious to see what is going to happen, but there are things happening currently. And we want to talk about the things that happened to you that led to your retirement and your unfortunate departure from this school district. And fortunately, not from the children, because
No,
I
because I
know
still
that
live
you still
here.
help them,
I
you
do.
still serve them. There's a whole center that you have access to be able to help them, and you still try to find ways to fund them as well.
I do.
And so we want to thank you for all of the work that you do. And thank you for coming on this platform today.
Thank you.
And then we're going to have you back for part two.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Well, I'll get your schedule because, like I said, I know you're a busy woman. You be traveling. You just got back from DC,
I
so
did.
you be traveling. So I'll get your schedule and we'll have you back on.
All right.
Listen,
Thank you.
thank you guys for joining me for this conversation today. We're definitely going to have part two and get into some dicey areas. So this is going to be a tough conversation that we are going to have coming up here shortly. You guys, it's getting tight out here in these YouTube streets. What I want you to do, if you can't be good, then be quiet. Because I'm finding that that's helping me somewhat to deal with things. So I wish nothing but blessings for your life, right? And let's wish that for other people too. And yeah, if you can't be good, be quiet.
Amen.
Ain't gonna hurt nobody.
Yeah.
You don't gotta say everything on your mind all at once. Oh, okay. All right then. I'm see y'all.